Power had a King Crimson sample, and King Crimson was like, no. And then Kanye's like, all right, well, I'm just gonna get it replayed. And then they're like, okay, just give us some money. Back in the day, I used to do tracking sessions where like I get random calls at like 11 p.m. like, yo, Snoop Dogg session, be there at 2 a.m. I'm like, what? He actually got an investor to have some funding, and then he'd go to like Ghostface and be like, here, I got 20 grand working on this project, will you do a verse on it? Okay, yeah, sure. And then you go to inspect the deck, here's some money. So he'd basically like kind of piece it together. It took 3 years to just do the recording portion in secret.
He's made a name for himself in the music industry as an esteemed producer, engineer, and songwriter with Diamond, Platinum, and Grammy credits. If the name Cooper Anderson doesn't sound familiar, you probably know him from his work with artists like Kanye West, John Legend, Ghostface Killah, and so many more. Cooper, I'm so excited to have you on and learn more about your story.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I see a couple of the diamond, platinum, whatever records that you got behind you in the studio. That's so awesome. But just to start things off, like what was your first like inclination that you wanted to work in music, or what got you into music in the first place?
So I guess I started back in high school. I had bands, and we would play in like bars and local places or whatever. And to get a gig, you needed a demo tape. So someone had to make the demo tape, and I joined a high school program. It was the first one in the country in a public school for like recording and contemporary music technology. So that's where I kind of learned how to like record demos and multi-track and all that. So I was always the one recording the demos for the bands. And then that led me to go to Berklee College of Music, and I majored in music production and engineering there because I was, just loved like working the decks
Yeah.
and overdubbing and all that stuff. And so I did the music production and engineering there. And then as I was graduating, I got a internship. It was literally like, walking off, collecting the thing, and then one of my teachers was like, "Hey, I got this thing for you." So I got the opportunity to work with Ken Lewis, who has like 100,000 more of these. But anyway, so I basically like graduated Berkeley, immediately went to New York and started working on Kanye records.
That's
Uh,
that's awesome.
yeah, so that's where I racked up a lot of the credits. And a lot of the stuff I did with Ken was sample replays. I don't know if you're
hmm
familiar with those.
Not really. I know of samples and sampling, but what are sample replay?
So, sample replay, like, well, as you know, with sampling, it's like, like I guess hip hop was probably the pioneer. A lot of dance music too does samples, but it's basically when
Yeah.
you take a recording of like a record that's already out, then you take a piece of it and then you make a new piece of music with that.
Yeah.
So artistically, it's a wonderful technique. It's a little bit different than like just playing, instruments or whatever. But the problem is that somebody owns that record that you're sampling.
Yeah.
So, but big artists are doing this, so the labels want to put it out. So what they have to do is either work out something with the owner of the original recording or
Yeah.
do a sample replay. So a sample replay is like basically a new piece of music that sounds exactly like the other piece of music.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Is it so how does that similar or different to like an interpolation or like a cover in a way?
Okay, so an interpolation is what I just described, which is basically like a similar sound, but like you change a few notes, change a few words, whatever. It's similar but different.
Yeah.
A cover has to be exactly the same arrangement.
Got it.
So you can do a cover song There's different like rules and regulations about how you release it, but anyone essentially can do a cover song. I mean, you've heard
Yeah.
of all kinds of artists getting big off YouTube covers, but an interpolation, the original rights holder has a lot more control over how that's released. So there's actually when you make a record, there's kind of two parts of the ownership. There's the master, which is like the actual recording of the record, and then
Yeah.
there's the composition, which is like, you can have a pad and a paper and write your composition down, and now you're covered. But so the interpolation is how we would get around if the person who owned the composition didn't want to clear that. So you can do an exact sound alike
Got
sample
it.
replay if the master holder says no, but the compositions holder says yes. Or you can do an interpolation, which is like nobody says yes, and okay, so we're just going to make a new thing that sounds very similar and gives the
Yeah.
same vibe. Now,
Yeah.
where it gets tricky is guys like Kanye would use this as kind of like a bargaining tool. So especially on Gold Digger and Power, I remember were two of the big ones. So Power had a King Crimson sample, and King Crimson was like, no. And then Kanye's like, all right, well, I'm just gonna get it replayed. And then they're like, okay, just give us some money.
Yeah. Yeah. So that like bargaining kind of back and forth played a big part in it. And so I'm curious. You mentioned going to school for music production. I'm in school for music production at the moment out in Los Angeles. And just before logging on here, actually, I saw you post a very funny, almost like warning meme of people who graduate with music production degrees, and there's like kind of a struggle to find jobs or things like that. And not everyone graduates and starts working on Kanye songs and things like that. So what tips or advice would you have to younger music producers, like just looking to kickstart their career or just graduating college?
Yeah, so that meme, I mean, it's not wrong. Essentially, though, that wasn't geared towards producers. That was more towards like engineers,
Got it.
because like there used to be a good engineering path where you could get a job in a studio after you graduated audio school. But the problem is the number of studios that are in business went down and the number of audio school graduates went up. So you basically are like way more competitive, and music in general has always been a competitive field. So what I would say, and it was kind of joking, like, oh no, I have to do corporate AV. I've
Yeah,
done
yeah,
corporate AV. It's actually not that bad, and the money is really good. So I would say that, it's not it's a decent field for sure. Um,
yeah,
but in order to do music, I mean, these days, well, one of the reasons why the studios are closing so much is because of the advent of like the bedroom producer and home
yeah,
studio, and people can kind of do everything on their own. So that's kind of what I've always been trying to do with my career, is like be able to work from home or work in smaller studios. I never worked in like, I mean, I've worked in the big studios, but only for like a day here, a day
yeah, it's
there.
never
I
been
was
a
never like,
necessity for you. I mean, I can tell. I just like looking around the room you're in now. I see like a like home studio setup. You mentioned like there's so much music technology out now that I was just talking to I forget who, but someone else who came on the show, and it was like rather than keep paying hourly for studio time and do it over and over again, you can now buy like an interface, a mic, whatever you need, and like purchase it with the one-time purchase, and then just use it in your home studio indefinitely, like until it breaks or until you want a new one. And that's just probably a lot more cost effective and gets a good enough quality to like release music and things, and you don't, like you said, you don't have to leave the bedroom. Throughout your career, how has the growth or like development of music technology affected it from like graduating Berkeley to now? Because I'm sure you've seen a bunch of new fads and music technology things come up and like have their moment.
Um, talk about that in a second, but one thing you said
Yeah,
before about the benefits of having a home studio, I would also say for artists, it's really important because it's like recording itself, especially, vocals,
yeah,
it's like a
yeah,
different skill. Like hearing your voice back through headphones is kind of a different like space. So that's one thing, like even if you are going into a big studio to record, you practice at home with your headphones, you'll get a lot more value out of the studio time. But yeah, it's like you have unlimited time. You can spend time trying things and not be like watching the clock and watching the budget and whatever.
yeah,
But anyway, to answer your question about technology, I mean, it's just amazing, really, like what, the advances, I've been doing this 21 years now. And I mean, a lot of it's kind of the same. Like, I was kind of like right towards the end of like the analog tape. Um, so I never, I mean, we used tape machines when I was in college, but I never in my professional career used like tape. It was
yeah,
always
yeah,
Pro Tools or the equivalent. But yeah, so that's been amazing. The like acceptance of digital for sure. And then these days it's like now you have all these like plugin companies that are kind of competing with each other and like the value that you can get is amazing. And I just tell people, there's so many choices out there. It's like you don't want to get overwhelmed. I just like would say if I was starting today, building a studio, I would like pick one suite that I vibe with, like a UAD or like a plugin alliance, or like pick one of those companies because they each offer like a suite of plugins that pretty much has everything you need.
yeah,
And, just don't overcomplicate it. Just kind of, pick one and go with it. And whatever you go, even like the stock plugins are pretty good in most of the DAWs, but and DAWs, of course, I mean digital audio
yeah,
workstation, which is
yeah,
the software that you use to do music production. But the thing that I like about using third-party plugins is that it doesn't matter which DAW you're using. Um, if you have the Slate bundle or whatever it is, any of the plugins, if you learn the plugin, then you could be in a studio that has Pro Tools and you can still use your plugin there. Or you can be at home on Studio One and it works in there. And then you go to your friend's house and they got Ableton and it's the same plugin here and there.
yeah, yeah. Definitely. And so it seems like Pro Tools is your DAW of choice, or like the one you use the most.
I use Pro Tools mostly for mixing because I have a hybrid analog setup. So I'm using the
Got
analog
it.
thumbing and it's like an older computer and so it's like an older version of Pro Tools, and it's still just it works. It's not the latest greatest, but it works. But for production stuff, I've been on Ableton for probably about 13 years now. I think it was 2012 when I
Awesome.
really got into Ableton. Before that, I was on Logic, but I have most of them installed on my computer. I've been getting into Studio One quite a bit lately and FL Studio.
Yeah.
But I work with so many people and doing so many things. It's nice to be able to like at least have a little bit of competency in
Yeah, yeah,
each
no,
job.
definitely. I'm mostly a Logic user, but where I'm at for college, they're like teaching through Ableton. They'll also, I think, at some point soon, I'll need to take a Pro Tools class, but they mostly teach in Ableton. And
Mhm.
already I've found it nice to be able to go back and forth between the two, and like depending on who I'm working with, or where I am, whether I'm working like on my laptop or in the studio at the school, like it's nice to have that versatility.
Yeah, Logic is great. The main drawback with Logic is it's Apple only. So,
Yeah.
that eliminates a lot of people are doing this on PCs and so then you're looking at Ableton is both, Pro Tools is both, and Studio One, Cubase. I mean, basically most of the other ones are, work on both. So it's nice to be
Yeah.
able to be compatible. But like you said, yeah, it's, if you're working with this person, basically the way I look at it is if you're working on a record, you don't want to have to change DAWs. Like I try to keep it in maximum two, and that's only because my final stage is pretty much always Pro Tools, like for mixing because of
Yeah.
the analog stuff. So, but yeah, ideally one, like just do everything in one. They all are pretty good at everything. Some have their pros and cons of whatever, but yeah, Logic's great because it's, all around. Like the vocal production is really good, mixing's really good, beat production is really good.
Hey, it's Heroek, and this episode is sponsored by me. Well, kind of. If you don't know, I recently started a clothing line called Quest Clothing, which you can shop right now. I'll leave some pictures here on the screen, but we got the core collection, which is just this sleek black and white design on a bunch of products. And then we also have some more like merch style stuff with cover arts for my songs and things like that. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and I'm really excited that I now have it. And so expect a lot more collections, a lot more designs coming out soon. I'll leave a link to it down below, and if you want to stay up to date with any new releases or anything like that, follow at ShopQuestClothing on Instagram. So go get cool designs like this, or even this, and you'll be helping me support all of this, the podcast, the music, everything. Plus, it just looks cool. We even got this nice big letter design on the back. Look at that. Look how cool that looks. So head to the link in the description to get yourself some Quest clothing, and make sure to follow at Shop Quest Clothing on Instagram for updates with new collections and stuff like that. And now back to the episode. Getting into the specific songs and projects you've worked on. If someone doesn't know the name Cooper Anderson, I listed some of the artists you've worked with, but what are some of the songs that they probably know you from, which probably include the ones behind you on that wall there too?
Yeah, so definitely the two biggest records I've worked on is We Are Young by Fun, which was like, I mean, I still hear that one on the radio. And then the other big
Yeah.
one was Gold Digger by Kanye West, which also is still on the radio quite a bit. So those are definitely the two kind of like most commercially successful records. But yeah, just a bunch of random, like a lot of New York people because I'm like well, I'm in New Jersey, but like New York City area based.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of hip hop here. Yeah, it's I
Awesome.
yeah, I honestly forget half the songs I work on, but there's so many
That's fine.
less.
It's a good thing though. It's like it's you probably forget because of the number of things you've gotten the pleasure of working on. And so let's just hop right into those two first and foremost. Like Gold Digger, how do you get the opportunity to engineer on that? Is that one of the things coming out of college that you worked on with Kanye, or what was the proposal to you of that?
Yeah, exactly. So on Gold Digger, it was a sample replay. So Gold Digger, the record, is mostly based on a Ray Charles sample, but they actually ended up clearing the Ray Charles sample. But there's another sample, I forget the original sample holder, but it's like this old soul record, and it's got this guy going, "Get down with the bus stop." And so there's like a scratch sample in the chorus on Gold Digger that goes, get down, get down. So that was the replay that we did, and that was a um it was a sound alike one, so it wasn't an interpolation. They
Got it.
they cleared the composition. I think. I'm not sure exactly, but also on like if you're just doing like two words like that, it's hard to like, you know,
Yeah, and hard to
you get.
enforce.
Yeah, I mean the lawyers will go in, you look at like the Katy Perry Dark Horse lawsuit, and things are getting weird with like what they're saying can and can't be. And it's always gray area that's up for interpretation. I was going to say
Yeah.
interpolation. But anyway, so yeah, basically, so Gold Digger, I got, it was because I was working with Ken, and that was, like I said, immediately after college. Um, but it was a few weeks after, like, so Ken had kind of seen what I can do and seen that I was dedicated, and that's when he was comfortable, like, you know, allowing me the opportunity to work on stuff like that. It's like,
Yeah.
so it wasn't like, oh, I just happened to get this job and yada yada yada. It was like I did all those other things that I mentioned before to build the skills where someone was like, okay, this guy can actually do it, you know. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it's like a little bit of luck and a little bit of and a lot of like skill building. So that's you never know like exactly where the opportunity is going to come from, but you got to be prepared. So, and that's how I think about like songwriting and stuff too. It's like if you want to write a hit, start writing and
yeah,
eventually it'll come.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And then over to the second song you mentioned, "We Are Young" by Fun. Is that how does that come about, or how do you get the opportunity
That
to
was kind of
engineer
the
on that?
same thing, even weirder. That was about 7 or 8 years later, because Gold Digger, well, I worked on it in 2005, came out in 2006. Fun, I worked on 2011, and it came out either late 2011 or early 2012, but it got big in like towards the end of 2012. But anyway, basically the other guy was on vacation, is what happened, and I was ready and there, so
Yeah,
that's how I got it. And
yeah.
that's the other thing
The best
too.
ability is availability.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing because like because this stuff is so uh competitive. It's like if you get burned out or don't want to do it, somebody else will. It's okay,
Yeah,
you know. And
and
that's like hard to deal with, but it presents an opportunity for guys like yourself where, if you can just keep building skills and just be ready, then when the
yeah,
opportunity strikes, you'll be ready to go in there and do what you need to do.
yeah. It's where opportunity meets preparation. Like you got to be prepared for whatever opportunity you're gonna get. You can't just like sit around and wait for it. Are you a music artist trying to find a way to get your music on as many streaming platforms as possible? Then check out DistroKid. DistroKid is a super user-friendly and super easy-to-use service that will make your music available in stores like Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon Music, YouTube, Snapchat, everything. Everything you could imagine, it's available. People will even be able to add your songs into their Instagram stories. DistroKid helps you with the distribution, monetization, and promotion of all of your music. Use the link in the description of this video for 7% off any DistroKid package you want. Pick from musician packages designed to help artists get their own music out there, or even get a label package where you can manage up to 100 artists from one profile. So that's more for like managers, labels, and you can also get the musician package that I mentioned earlier, which is more for artists, producers, things like that. It's super easy, and you can get 7% off any package right now with the link in the description of this video. So once again, if you're looking for a way to get your music on as many streaming platforms as possible, I'm talking any platform you can think of, get DistroKid and get 7% off right now with the link in the description. Back to the program. For these specifically, but really anything you engineer, is it getting into the studio with the artist, or is it kind of like you said, working from this home half analog setup that you have and just working with the files?
Well, I do a little of both. I'm like got a family now, two daughters and everything, so going into the studio is a little harder. Um, so I mostly only do that for artists that I'm producing. Like back in the day, I used to do tracking sessions where like I'd get random calls at like 11 p.m. like, "Yo, Snoop Dogg session, be there at 2 a.m." I'm like, "What?" Um, stuff like that. And that's great when you're young and it's a great way to like build credits. But if the kid's got to be at school the next day, for me, that doesn't work out. So for
Yeah,
me, where I'm at now is definitely more like mixing and production and stuff where I can do my part like, at home and then,
yeah,
send it out. And I do a lot of stuff on Zoom too, like the technology for being able to like collaborate remotely is just like amazing now. Yesterday I was doing
Yeah.
a session, just vocal recording where the artist has his own Pro Tools setup. He knows how to record and everything, but I'm just like, helping him like fine tune the process, and I would be
That's
like,
awesome.
recording the tracks and like, and then I can give my comments too and everything. So it's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's super cool. How old are your daughters, if you don't mind me asking? I'm just curious, like do they have the concept of what dad does for a living? Like do they connect that like they hear these hit songs and they're like, oh my dad helped make that.
Oh yeah, well, so my daughters are big Taylor Swift fans.
God.
And so my mentor Ken had worked on a bunch of Taylor Swift. That was actually after I started my own business. But I told them that he worked on Taylor Swift, and my daughter's like, "Oh my gosh." But yeah, they're 7 and 5, so they're still on
Okay.
the young side, but the
Yeah,
younger one is like getting into singing and stuff, and they both really love music, so that's really fun.
awesome.
Oh,
And
and if
so
there are anybody else listening with kids or whatever, and even for you too, I would say like one great skill to learn is DJing.
yeah, it's so funny you say that. I actually like literally a month ago started like wanting to learn how to DJ, and I'm like borrowing a friend's DJ controller to like to get into it. But it's yeah, it's definitely something I want to learn because it seems like a cool I don't even know, just another avenue in music.
It's yeah, if for producers, I would say it's almost essential. I use the I used to like DJ it like, like professionally for like, shows and clubs and weddings and that sort of thing. But I use the software just to like listen to music in the studio. If I have an artist come in, we can put on a song and then it shows you the tempo, and most of them link with like the streaming services now, so I can
Yeah.
find every song I need and just load it right in. You can loop sections. Some of them have like the stem separation built right in. So what I would do is like, I have artists come in and be like, all right, I want the drums from this song and the chord progression from that song. So I'd take like those two songs, I'd beat sync them, stem separate the drums from this one, and then take that one with the chords, but like change the key a little bit or whatever,
Yeah.
all in like 2 minutes, like just super quick, and then
That's
we'd see what
awesome.
it sounds like. And of course, you can't use any of that to release because it's, copyrighted material, but you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
get the vibe going. And if you can, record that into Ableton or Logic or whatever you're using, and then record vocals on top of that, it's like a wonderful starting block. And then you just mute
Yeah.
all
Yeah, it's
that and
something to
then build
build
it
off of.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because as a
I
producer, I mean, like, yeah, I'm very focused on the vocals, and pretty much everything I do, like, is in support of the vocal.
yeah, that's awesome. I want to get into your production as well, but just in one last thing on this whole like technology stem splitting thing and the way you use it as a building block to go off of. I remember over this summer and like during this huge spike in AI stuff and everyone's freaking out about like is it gonna like start making its own music? It's like a lot of artists and producers are gonna be irrelevant. And I heard a really interesting take. I think it was from Adam, who's a member of AJR, but I'm not entirely sure. But he was saying like with like the AI like lyric writers or like songwriting things, don't like be like write a song about this and use that as your song. They were almost treating it as like having another writer in the room and being like, I have this one line. How could I how could I make it more expressive or something like that? And like bouncing ideas off of it as just like another, almost a co-writer in a sense. Um, and so for your production specifically, how do those credits or those collaborations usually come about? Is it you having an instrumental that you're looking for artists with, or do artists come to you and you work with them to make a song?
For me personally, I've done it every which way. I mean, I consider myself a finisher, so like
Got it.
wherever you're at as whatever kind of collaboration we're doing, I'm gonna come in and try to fill out the rest and get it to a finished product, basically. But yeah, all of those things are totally viable. Like um I'm sorry, I completely spaced on what the examples you said were.
No problem.
But it's basically like and either approach. Oh yeah, so it's like am I basically pitching instrumentals uh or are people coming with full songs? Was that kind of the
Yeah,
question?
yeah, yeah,
It's
basically.
definitely both. Definitely both.
Okay.
But I don't sit around making beats a lot. And when I do make beats, what I'll do is I will get an acapella, like either one of my old ones that I've, recorded back in the day and never came out, or like just, stem separate a song I like or whatever, and then kind of do a remix, and then you can just mute that and now you have a beat. But the difference between that beat and just, typing it in, cranking it out on Fruity Loops or whatever is this now you know it works with a vocal because you made it around a vocal. So it leaves the space where a vocal could go in there.
Hey, if you're like me and you're interested in the YouTube or creator space, you should check out The Published Press. The Published Press is a completely free newsletter founded by YouTubers Colin and Samir. They host their own podcast talking to some of YouTube's largest creators. They've edited some of the best content I've seen on YouTube, and now they're sharing their knowledge about the YouTube space with you for free. The Published Press comes out 3 times a week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, with everything going on with your favorite creators and platforms. And like I said, it's completely free. Just enter your email address to receive the Published Press whenever it comes out, and that's it. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below, sign up to the Published Press, and get all the info you need on the industry.
One specific production example of yours I want to dive into is Torn by Alec Chambers. That specific one, what was the process of that like? Was it a studio environment in your home studio? How did that song come about?
That was in New York. He was working with like he was essentially signed to a production company with my friend Sarah. So it was at her studio, and uh, it was like for a competition basically. Um, and I forget exactly because I wasn't the one who entered the competition. They just brought me in basically to produce the record. So Alec is like, he's a producer himself. At the time, he was still like more of an artist and just like he had the home studio, but he was just getting started on that front. So he really needed, well, I wouldn't say needed, but like he had better results when he, came in and like collaborated with
Yeah.
someone, like myself who was good with that. And Sarah is kind of the same thing. She's like a songwriter. She has the studio, but that's not like her forte. So, and I think a lot of those sessions like that, like in Nashville, they'll have like a track guy. You have the writer and then there's the artist and the track guy.
Yeah.
So so I was the track guy basically on that record.
Awesome. Awesome. And then the last specific song example or music example I want to dive into is I think one of the coolest things, and not just that you've worked on, but just like in general, I loved learning about it, is being a part of music history in the sense of once upon a time in Shaolin with the Wu-Tang Clan,
Oh
the
yeah.
kind of like lost album of it basically, or this like super secretive, like there's almost like a mythology around it. How did you become a part of that project, or what can you tell me about working on that?
Yeah, that was another thing with Ken too. So basically there was this guy, Silver Rings was kind of the producer, and he was, I believe, the tour manager of Wu-Tang Clan, and he was kind of the one who came up with the whole idea, and he actually did it in secret
Yeah.
because Wu-Tang members at the time like they had like beefs with each other essentially.
Yeah.
So what he did is he actually got an investor, to have some funding, and then he'd go to you know um like Ghostface and be like, "Here, I got 20 grand. I working on this project. Will you do a verse on it?" Okay, yeah, sure. And then you go to inspect a deck. Okay, yeah, I got here's some money. Yeah, so he'd basically like kind of piece it together. It took 3 years to just do the recording portion in secret, and then it was about the 20th or 25th, I forget, anniversary of I think it was the 36 Chambers album.
Hmm.
So RZA was like trying to figure out like a way to kind of capitalize on that milestone, and then that's when Silver Rings like presented it to them, like, I got this thing, maybe we could do this or whatever. And then I'm not sure exactly how it ended up being like the one copy thing, but I know the idea behind it was like um the classical music, like Mozart and like Beethoven and all that, the classical composers, they were commissioned by royalty essentially to compose these pieces of music for specific events. And
Yeah.
that was like the paradigm that they were looking at. They were looking for someone of royalty status with like the funds to like commission it, except they just kind of produced the product first and then looked for a buyer. And then, they got the pharma guy purchased it. And I think it's like I think it's in like government evidence now. I'm not really sure exactly where the one
Yeah,
copy
yeah, I
is.
think it's so like scattered now. I was trying to read up more about it, even beyond just like this podcast, just learning about such a cool part of music history. But I think the one physical copy is held by some government body because it was like seized when the pharma guy was arrested, um and then there have been like snippets here and there played because they were like after it sold. I forget who it was, but someone was like gonna do like a one time like online live stream of it or like part of it. I think it was like 30 minutes of the like almost 2 hour album and something like that. So a bunch of like fragments here and there of it, and I'm sure there's people pushing to have the full thing released just like normally nowadays of like streaming and digitally and everything. But yeah, it was so fascinating to learn about and so awesome that you got to be a part of that because it had, I mean, on top of the Wu-Tang members, it had insane features from like Cher and other people famous at that time. So
Yeah,
that
I
was
honestly forget all the people that are on it, but yeah, there was about I want to say like 25 songs on it. It was a very
yeah.
long
Yeah.
album. So yeah, we were working on that for quite a while. And it sounded like essentially like it was made back then. Like it was like another like 36 chambers. It was, very authentic with the sound.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last thing about it that I do remember is they had at one point there was I think it was some museum set up like a listening experience for it that it was
Yeah.
like you could get tickets and go in, but there was no recording allowed and they like checked people for devices and things like that. And like
Yeah.
that was also just another cool thing, regardless of this specific album, but just the idea of kind of like almost a not a concert, but like a live music event type of thing. Like you have to be there to hear it, experience it, whatever it was, which I feel like is
Yeah, so
always
that
cool.
the listening party was like that was part of the marketing plan too,
Got it.
because that was before it was sold. So basically
Hmm.
they had this thing, and I think it cost about 600,000 to make the record because the actual cover for the
Yeah,
one physical copy cost about $16,000 to manufacture. It's like
that's
rare
insane.
mahogany with like gold plate, whatever.
Yeah,
So that was part of it. Like, they had to like build up the hype to, I think it sold for like 2 million or something. So they had to
Yeah, yeah,
get the build the value up to get that price. And that was
yeah.
part of that. But yeah, I mean they've talked about doing other things, but I think as soon as they like release it or like live stream it or whatever, the value is going to go down because then now it's like
Definitely.
everybody
Yeah.
has it and they spent so much time and effort, like years of work. Uh, not money aside, it was just a lot of time. So I don't know if they have to be very careful about that if they want to keep the value up.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. You mentioned like the physical casing of it. It looks like some like old artifact in a movie or something. Like it looks super awesome and looks as special as it is. And so
And it appeared in
in
the Skrillex video, I think, at one point too.
oh really? That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah.
Um, so in terms of just like mu music industry in general, or like your work in it, has there been any moment that made you second guess it in any way, or like wonder if this was the right path for you?
Not really.
Yeah,
I've
that's
always kind of
totally
like,
fine.
I mean, yeah, because
That's good.
I mean,
Probably means that it is the
I'm
right
trying to
path.
like, yeah, I'm trying to like formulate a way to articulate my feeling about that. But basically, like, I'm from a small town in Vermont. I grew up like right near like Killington is kind of the big like ski area.
Hmm.
And I had, it has a pretty good music scene up there, because of all the tourism and everything. And for where it is, and so when I left to go to college, I was like, I can always come back if it doesn't work out. So
Yeah,
that's kind of how I felt about it, and then like, coming here to, New York City area and everything. And it's like, it's still working out. So I'm not going
yeah,
back.
yeah.
And
That's
that's
awesome.
kind of
And
how I've felt about it.
back to the start, did you have anyone around you or anyone you knew that acted as like a example that it can be done? Like, did you know anyone who was working in the music industry, or did it just seem interesting to you and you wanted to try and make it work?
No, I didn't know anybody. Definitely
Okay.
not. 'Cause
Yeah.
I mean, well, like I said, we had a pretty good local music scene for the like size of population. There was, people around
Yeah.
there make a living just performing in it's a pretty small scene, but it's probably like 30 or 40, maybe even more people that are like making a full-time living just off playing gigs like
That's awesome.
around
Yeah.
there. So that was the only people I knew really, and the big thing would be like, oh, I got a gig in Burlington or Boston or something like that, so
Yeah. Even
uh,
that though, like since I was younger, and it did help that I have a couple like family friends and whatnot that work in the music industry in different senses. One like producer, artist management, and whatnot. So it was a clue. I was clued in that it's something you could do. Like I know a lot of people who don't really know the behind the scenes of music at all. Like they just see like the artist name on a song and think that it's just the artist. Um, but it did help to have examples like that, and even someone who just can make a living off of it. Like since I was younger, I knew like I didn't want a 9 to 5 like office job kind of thing, or at least not something in like a finance business sense. Like I like I'm sure artist management or like music related office job would be interesting to me and things like that. But wanting to do something creative, have kind of that freedom and be able to make a living off of it, like you're saying with these people performing around the Killington area, like that was once I knew there was a possibility for that, it was over. I was like, what do I need to do to make
yeah.
that happen?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
that's great. Yeah, the thing is like you definitely, I would say, need to plan to spend more than just the 9 to 5 hours to like really
Yeah,
get
yeah.
his work. Like it takes a lot of time. You got to have more of like an entrepreneurial mindset because there isn't like
Absolutely.
a proven career path for this. Like it's not like, oh, I'm going to start at this company as a, you know, as a
Yeah,
cashier, and then I'm going to work up, and then I'm going to be the manager, and then I'm going to be
yeah.
the partner, and then I'm going to be the regional manager. There's no like path like that.
It's
So
all very free form and
yeah,
kind of up to
you gotta,
you.
you gotta kind of make your own way, and everybody's a little bit different. So that's the best thing you can do is like, yeah, look at other people and see what they're doing, and then get inspiration from that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to get into now like the whole big push nowadays for music credits, which I'm also a huge fan of just in terms of producing and whatnot. But like Spotify, all these platforms, Apple Music have credits now available for the songs. You can see like songwriters, producers, the Grammys way too recently. I'm glad that it's there, but it like should have been there a while ago. The Songwriter of the Year category, things like that, and Producer of the Year. How how do you think we can shed more of a light on like the engineers, producers, songwriters behind songs and things like that? And I guess just like what are your thoughts on being behind the scenes?
Uh, yeah, I mean, it's a mess is kind of the long and short of it. It's always been a mess. It's maybe getting a little bit better, but what the
Yeah.
problem is there's a lot of like emotion in it. So like, for instance, for me, on the Fun record, um, the producer, Jeff Basker, like didn't want to put my name on because he's like, oh, I got two guys for two drums, like, oh. But it's like, dude, I was in the studio for 3 days, 16 hours a day doing this.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
didn't,
And
it wasn't, I'm not doing it for my health. So, I don't know. I was a little annoyed by that, but it's like, but by the time I had done that record, I'd been left off so many records. But yeah, it's like basically whenever you're working for uh, a major label record, I would be sure to make sure you get credits, like have it be part of the contract if possible, follow up everything because like the longer time goes on, the harder it is to like retroactively get that back on. And back in the day, it was like, oh, we messed up the credits, but we'll put you on the second pressing, of the
yeah.
CD. So it's like when they sell out the first batch, then we'll put you on this. It's like, okay, but so I actually was just recently trying to get on the what's the one that everybody uses now, the Muso.ai
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
or Muse.ai or whatever it is. And it's the same thing. It's like, you can submit to have your credits on there, but you have to like provide all this paperwork and like, Gold Digger, it was 20 years ago that I worked on that. So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't have any of that stuff, the old emails or whatever. Fortunately, at least I got the plaques because these plaques, the RIAA certification, you have to get the label to sign off on that to get those. They
Yeah.
don't just hand them out. So that was the one thing I made sure that I could do is like, I got the plaque like as soon as it was possible. And so at least I have that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, which is huge. Which is huge. It's very important.
yeah.
And like even for the credits, like there's been a push, but I feel like it could be more like Spotify. I love going to like song credits and seeing like the writers and producers and whatnot. But that's what it gives you. It says like written by and produced by. There's no information on mixing, mastering, engineering, whatever is like the even more niche stuff in a sense, or like yeah. So that I wish would be more at the forefront, or like you could get a full comprehensive list of like everyone's involvement because you get that on. I mean, I have my vinyl collection here. Like a bunch of them have this super long credits in it of even down to like who the A&R was, the manager, and like that's what I wish I could get on streaming services. Even to that point, just like regardless of management or label or whatnot, just who actually had a part in making the song what it is, like in its final form.
Yeah, for sure. And like to play devil's advocate on that, the I
Yeah,
think the reason why all those names are left off is because many people just don't look at that job as like as valuable as
yeah,
artist or being the songwriter or being the producer. Like after that, it's like, yeah, this guy mixed it, but like if somebody else mixed it, would it still have been just as big? You know, if
yeah,
you have Max Martin produce your record, yeah, it's this big, but if you have somebody else produce your record, probably not going to be as big.
yeah,
Maybe,
yeah.
but you never know. But anyway, so that's, I don't necessarily agree with that argument, but I think that's the reason
No, but
why.
there's a reason behind it. I see it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
And
but yeah, I agree. And I think as, for like, people who are doing this, the idea it's the same concept is like you just want to keep doing more and more, work on more stuff, make sure you get your credits in whenever you can. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But the more that you do, the more opportunities that you will have to build your credits. And credits are very important because you know, then when I go to clients, I can be like, all right, look at all these songs I worked on, and then they can check and like, yeah, maybe one or two of them it doesn't say the name, but the other ones it all does. So, great. All right, this
yeah.
sounds legit. So
So you mentioned being left off of a bunch of songs, especially earlier in the career. How did you deal with that, or what were your thoughts on that, or the emotion on that of being like, hey, I had a part in the song and I'm not getting credited.
yeah, I mean, I was pretty much annoyed. It's like I did all this work and like I can't even get the credit. And yeah, it's like you get paid, but it's like the credit is almost more valuable than the money if you're
Yeah,
getting paid hourly, if you don't have like a ownership like stake in the record. So I would fight. Back in the day, it was all music. I'd send them emails like once a month, just like, "Hey, you're gonna add my credits," and it would be dumb stuff. Like it would be independent records with like three people who worked on it, and they'd have the other two and not me. And my name's clearly on the CD. I'm like, how is this even possible? It was so
yeah,
ridiculous. So I'd send them like screenshots. I'd scan the covers, send it in, and just crickets. So after a while, I'm just like, all right, it is what it is. I'm not going to waste my time, you know. And it gives me a fun story to tell.
yeah, yeah. And well, so has it ever turned into kind of a two-sided story of like you worked on it and you have this proof and someone's whether malicious or not, like trying to leave you off or isn't giving you the credit you deserve.
Well, yeah, it's like that. I think the main reason that happens is because people feel like crediting others will diminish their credit. Because at the end of the day, it's the producer who's responsible for submitting credits to the label for the release. So if the
Hmm.
producer is like, oh yeah, well, they didn't really do that much or whatever. But yeah, I mean, even like assistant credits are important. And it's like, yeah, maybe the assistant just got coffee and like chit-chatted with like the crew and kept
Yeah,
them like from distracting the engineer. Maybe that was all they did, but like they still should be credited as assistant, like
yeah, yeah. And so getting into some of the business side, and feel free to share or not share whatever you want, but the you mentioned like getting cuts on all the songs and then also like getting paid for it as well. What is the structure, or kind of how are you earning money from the songs that you work on?
well, my long-term goal has always been to get as much publishing as I possibly can. So that's why I do songwriting sessions. And as a producer, it's harder, I would say. Some people just give me points just because, but the thing is, like, I think of it as like planting seeds, and not all of them are going to grow. You plant
Hmm.
1,000 seeds and maybe two or three of them grow into big money trees. So that's kind of my goal. And just getting my name on, ownership stakes here and there is because that's like the gift that keeps on giving. I got a Netflix placement 2021 for a song we did in 2016, and it's like I'm still getting checks from it. And it was like
Yeah, that's
they used
awesome.
like 6 seconds of the song turned down in the background in a transition. I didn't even know, like I watched the whole movie and like I'm like I didn't know where it was, and then my friend who
What was my song in there?
yeah, he's like it's right here at this timestamp, and I'm like all right if you say so. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, like sync is a great way to do that too. I've been thinking about doing getting into more of the sync stuff, but it's the same thing with the sync world. It's like very competitive, so you're competing against people who are like really focused on that, and
Yeah,
it's not like I can just like take my leftovers and throw it up on a sync library and expect much to happen with it. But
yeah, yeah. I've met and know some people who like are like sync is what they do. Like they're making music for sync placements and like trying to get money in that sense. And so obviously when it's not to disrespect it or discredit anything, but when it's like the second tier of someone else's music of like you said, the leftovers, it's like obviously hard to compete with someone who's like going in with that being the goal. Um, and so a couple more hypothetical questions to start wrapping up here, whether it's engineering, producing, whatever role that you would have, who's one artist or band that you would love to collaborate with?
that I would love to collaborate with.
Like the kind of the dream collaboration or like a huge goal of yours.
Well, I've been like really into like EDM and the like pop EDM DJs these
Hmm.
days. So pretty much any of those guys, like David Guetta, Afrojack,
Yeah,
uh, Millennium, oh Griffin. I'm a huge Griffin fan. Like those guys.
yeah,
Would love to work with any of them.
yeah. Afrojack's awesome. Like David Guetta especially is like he's someone I respect because he's gotten to that top of the top level and is still like working as hard as someone like trying to make a name. Like I feel like every week or every other week I'm getting like notifications of a new David Guetta song or credit that he's on, and I'm like, this is insane. And he's
Yeah,
still
I mean
like
those
DJing
guys.
shows and everything.
Yeah, when you get to that level, you have like a team. Um, So you have teams who are kind of like helping you build the records, and that's why those guys are able to produce so much output. And people are like,
Got it.
"Oh, well, he just has a team. It's like he's not really doing anything, But it's like the way I think of it is like, like what is Splice?
Yeah.
Splice is like if you're just starting out, Splice is your team. You're going through, oh, I need a sample for this. Click, done. That's your team. And he just has people doing that are like custom for the specific project, essentially.
And then as kind of another uh, finishing up question of your credits, looking back on your career, is there a song you've worked on that's your favorite, just like to listen to, or that you like the song from?
Um, you know, I'm I don't really know how to answer that. I mean, I like
Yeah,
a lot of the stuff that I have worked on. I'm often like surprised, like some of the indie records that I worked on, like especially like if it's been like, years ago or whatever, and it'll just kind of pop on. I'm like, oh yeah, I did a pretty good job on that. That's
yeah,
always fun. That I think that's what I get the most enjoyment out of like a record that I forgot even existed, and then, I'm
yeah.
like, okay,
And then it
that's
still
pretty
holds
good.
up. It still
Yeah,
hits.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I learned so much. It's been an honor to talk with someone as credited and accomplished as you. But thank you so much for coming on. I feel like I learned a bunch, and I'm wishing you the best in your career from now on.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate you having me. And I just want to say also too, like I'm on a mission to like, help young and up and coming producers, like yourself. So, that was one of the reasons why I came on here. So if
Yeah, thank you. And I'll
yeah,
definitely keep in touch. We'll stay
yeah,
connected beyond this, well beyond
yeah,
this.
yeah.
So
But yeah,
yeah.
if anyone else out there, if you vibe with that, hit me up.
Yeah,
I'm on.
young producers, young engineers, Cooper
Yeah.
Anderson,
Let's let's make the whole
legend.
craft better. Come on.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's been not to go off on a tangent at the end here, but that's always like I never understood the whole like gatekeeping side of music and whatnot and people like wanting industry secrets and whatnot. Because I mean, I have a blast like helping the people around me and working with them and whatnot. And I've heard interviews of bigger artists and producers being like, yeah, I think Phineas, who I love, is a huge proponent of it. Like he wants the whole like free the stems, free the loop samples, whatever movement. Like him, if he could, it seems like he wants to just like give that to the people and be like, yeah. And that's also why I love watching all these production breakdowns that artists and producers do because it's like as other than like actually working on the song and being in the studio, it's as in the weeds as you can get to a song, basically.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. We got to stick together if we're going to beat this AI.
yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
worried, but yeah,
Yeah, you're all set. You're all set. It's
but
us that has to worry.
but yeah, if you're hobbyist producer doing mediocre tracks, that's who the AI is going to be. Like the
Yeah,
elevator music, the background music. If that's your thing, you might want to step it up and let's do it together.
yeah, yeah. Awesome.